Welcome to the Love, Sex, and Leadership podcast, where you can discover simple tantric teachings to embody your true power, awaken your soul's wisdom, and live an inspired life as a natural, intuitive, and heart-centered leader. Welcome, everyone, to Love, Sex, and Leadership. I'm here for another fun conversation with a dear brother I love, admire, and appreciate in the world. We've known each other for several years. I think actually the first time we connected was being on his podcast many, many years back, and in a relationship with a dear friend of mine. And we get to see each other at different times in the world, and always enjoyable to have a conversation and dive into his world. So welcome, everyone. This is Kevin Orosz. Nice to have you here, bro.
Stoked to see you, Aaron. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say let's just dive right into it in terms of this last week. There's definitely some shit that's gone up in the world of politics and the American vibe. I've recently put out a couple posts and trying to really, from my perspective, showcase the place of Trump being kind of the ultimate shadow projection that is being placed upon the world, an opportunity for people to grow, evolve, and expand with everything they hate about him out there in the world. And I'm curious from your side of it and the different streams and avenues that you're both kind of going into, as well as kind of seeing multiple sides. I'm curious what your perspective of him coming into the changing of American politics and what that means, as well as what that can potentially mean for we as an American people, as well as a global tribe. What's some of your take on what's happening?
Yeah, it's super fascinating. I mean, I'm very interested in like the markets and economics and blockchain. Like I've been into that for many years. So I naturally follow politics because of their interplay. I think it's been a fascinating season on 2024 Earth, right? We're in like the season finale right now. What's so interesting about it to me is like Trump is this outcast kind of character. He's not a career politician. He's a very bombastic kind of guy. And he's been like, you just got to step back objectively. He's been more villainized and like projected upon, not just by like normal people, but like by institutions, right? And legacy media than anyone ever. So to me, that raises some alarms. I'm like, wait, what's going on here? Is he actually that guy? I don't know him personally. But what I see, and I wrote a post about this, it's like, I've never registered to vote. I've never voted. I don't have a horse in the race. I'm observing it. I think it's interesting when people are like, you're not voting, as if voting's the only way to like change the world, right? What I'm seeing is like it's a giant Rorschach test or like a psychic mirror. So the way you felt about this election, especially the people, we have mutual friends in our communities, people, doing shadow work, men's work, women's work, working with medicine, like wanting to like become the best versions of themselves, getting so tangled and riled up, almost like like a toxic relationship where like this person who's like so well put together and intelligent and emotionally sensitive, empathetic, all of a sudden is like a raving lunatic when they post about politics, right or left. So to me, it's like really, like, I think you nailed it. It is this big shadow projection. And to me, it's all about your relationship to authority. It's your relationship to masculine authority. It's your relationship to sovereignty. And like, do I feel free to do X, Y, Z? And then it's like a parental projection as well. It's like, is mommy and daddy in this government kind of pedestal? How are they affecting me? And I think a lot of people are fair enough, rightly upset because they care deeply about these social issues and things, which, hey, I think that's great that people are getting riled up and passionate. What people forget is that the government works for the people in this country, the Constitution, right? So they should actually be afraid of us saying, hey, you're fired, because they work for us. They're public servants, technically.
Yeah, I thank you for that perspective. And I think I'm sure even us talking about this from some of the viewpoints that I've seen coming in of, oh, well, you're two, white Anglo-Saxon men speaking about, the politics and this and all of that kind of what is being called upon me is like, gaslighting and everything else. And you don't actually have an opinion because you're not one of the minority and all of that. I'm curious what your, from both a consciousness perspective, and more important than anything, as well as just the reality of what framework of understanding that people are in, and is there a capacity for someone to actually get that shadow piece, because that shadow piece is important, but as a white man in the world, I guess it's going to be cast upon us as well. I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, it's all about like race, class, and gender. Those are like the hot buttons, right? So there's
Mm,
the racial inequalities, there's the class, like wealthy versus poor, and then obviously the gender dynamics have gone pretty nuts this election cycle. And these are old, these have always been the kind of like little levers in history within a population or civilization, race, gender, and class. So it's nothing new. I think it is interesting that and I'll speak bluntly. Like I think a lot of it, unfortunately, is ideological hijacking, and like it's like religion almost.
mm,
Like in my men's group, when we do these philosophy symposiums, I often invoke like the new religion. Used to be Christianity, right? The West, the European vision of the West, and Christianity came to America, and then there's all this spread of empire. Now it's like materialism and science. Trust the science. We figured everything out. Trust the experts. That's a religious organization, right? It's a priesthood. And the media has done this with politics too. And unfortunately, some of these ideologies, while I acknowledge the inequality and like people are rightly upset about racial relations, because yeah, white ancestors have colonized and enslaved a lot of brown ancestors, let's say, like that's a reality. But to bring it into the global conversation now with the internet and memes and TikTok and reels and these little sound bites, and then people are they're flipping the tortilla. It's like victim consciousness is being empowered. It's like I gain power and social virtue in my little in group by being oppressed.
mm,
Like that's an
mm,
interesting reversal we're seeing happen. Also, there's the conversation that like we want to minimize and de-pedestalize X voices.
mm,
Like white cis men, you don't get to have an opinion because you did this. It's like, what are we talking about actually? Are we
mm,
going to go into some kind of revenge reparation cycle where it's like, all right, your ancestors beat up my ancestors, so now you just shut up and we're going to enforce our views on you? And it's like, is that actually what we want to do? Like
mm,
more of the mind of like, yeah, there's a lot of wrongs to right. Like I'm not
mhm,
going to say there isn't. Like we obviously have a lot of work to do as a species, and men and women, different communities around the world. We got a lot of work to do if we want to create what I want to see on the world personally, eudaimonia, like human flourishing, right?
mhm,
Uh,
mhm,
Aristotle used this term of like genuine human flourishing in a world
mm,
that works for everyone. That's the world I want to build with my business, my work, everything I do. We're not going to get there by like going into these revenge cycles of insulting and straw manning each other. We're
mm,
only going to do it with curiosity and compassion and
mm,
reconciliation. Like I'm real
mhm,
big on like reconciling and forgiving these imagined or real slights, and then getting really curious about that person across from you who you've been unfortunately propagandized and conditioned by external forces to see a certain way, when actually that's just your brother or sister, and
mhm,
you're much more
mhm,
alike with them than you are different. There's just
mhm.
these very polarized things that separate you, right? And it's an intimacy conversation ultimately.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that, and the curiosity and compassion. Really, I'm hearing strongly in that, and this piece. If someone can actually be curious about the world around them, about their partner, about their enemy, about the individual that they have such strong animosity towards, we really can have a changing, shifting environment. I'm would love to hear, these principles of both compassion and curiosity, especially in the realms of men's work, and men kind of opening up their capacity to see a little bit differently and to navigate waters beyond just a penetrative presence. Where do you see, especially in the realms of new men leading beyond old paradigms with things like compassion and curiosity, where the interplay is between these?
Yeah, this is really fascinating. I've been working with this group we started earlier this year, the Men's Academy. Got men from all over the world in there, and it's really fascinating to hear these men, some of which have zero work and like experience in a men's circle of brotherhood. Others are more OGs, and what I'm noticing is like, the old paradigm of masculinity obviously wasn't great. You know, it did a lot of amazing things. It built the world we're living in. So let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys that get called patriarchs and conquerors and oppressors, yeah, there were some bad apples, but a lot of them were just very strong-willed men that wanted to protect and provide for women and children. That's just a fact in history. Now
Mm-hmm.
we can say they had terrible effects, which they did in some cases, and wars and genocide and all this stuff that's happened. It's like we have to like feel that. Like that's a big hard part for men, right? Is like actually feeling the impact and the pain that's been built up. It's generational.
Mm-hmm.
Healing that with women, with your wife, your girlfriend, your partner, your mom, your sister. Like there's a lot there. And you got to understand those guys are all operating from scarcity. So if we look at masculine consciousness, how it built the world, it's a zero sum game. In game theory, it's like zero sum. There has to be winners and losers, and there's a finite amount of the pie. So I'm going to get mine, right? I'm going to take as much as I can. I'm going to extract and conquer. This worked for a while because there was real scarcity. Our ancestors were like battling nature and each other and had to survive, right? So they made decisions based on that. We're in a post-scarcity world. We're in pure abundance. The amount of natural resources and food and information on the internet, and like it's insane. Like I can Uber Eats a filet mignon to my house right now and go do all this stuff. And of course, some people economically aren't there yet, but I believe the whole world's going to get there. We're seeing this in the stats in the third world with their birth rates and their technological advancement and their economies. You know, the world's kind of evening out with globalization. And I don't believe in like a globalist agenda where everyone should be under one government or something. It's more like because of technology and where we're at, we're entering a positive sum game. And this is where men can lead in a new paradigm where there's not winners and losers in the old sense. You just make the pie bigger. You literally practice abundance. And for men and men's work, this is very important for competition, right? You know, I love sports, I love competition, I think it's healthy, but not at the expense of like tearing down other men and your brothers. You're going to see new leaders, and we're already seeing this, right? That are going to be in collaboration, and they're builders and creators where they're like, hey, I'm going to build something that works for everybody. There's still going to be like different amounts of gain and loss, right? Because the people that do add the most value are going to receive the most value back. That's just natural law. But we can create a world that works for men working with men and loving men, and then men protecting and loving women. And then the children that come out of this, they're going to live in a completely different world with different nervous systems and hopefully less trauma. Like that's what I want to see like men's work building, right?
Oh, yeah, thank you. The yeah, I this old paradigm of men kind of forging the way, I mean, is definitely been a necessity. It's been a necessity for the growth in the space that we, currently live in, and yet, I had another train of thought, but that's all right. What I see as a result with this is that in the realms of polarity, what I see men kind of doing when they're coming into the realms of compassion and care and this kind of softness that comes through, because that strong, forceful, direct, penetrative masculine has been kind of so shamed in many ways, that I find, a lot of the men I come across, and I'm sure it's the same for you, there's a lot of men that are so afraid of standing in their power. They're so afraid of like being the one to stick the sand and the stick in the sand and stand for what they believe in, because so many minorities and so many people are ready to, especially a white man in power. It's like, oh, there must be something wrong there. We need to take him down right away because, he's just doing that old paradigm thing. And the result I see, and I felt at times, is almost like a walking on eggshell feel, and how to navigate that more effectively into our day-to-day world in a way in which can support um, deeper integration, but also men not being afraid of their power. I'd love to hear your stake on this, because this is something it's like we need more of, but there's so many men afraid of stepping into that power.
100%. I mean, this is the meta pattern I see with all the men I work with, is like the nice guy, or being a pushover and being too easy to yield and afraid to like be sharp and assertive and like very masculine and setting boundaries or setting a objective or path. And what's interesting is the women I work with, all of them are craving this from men, especially women in the conscious community, right? These like tantrikas, these female entrepreneurs. I work with a lot of like female like coaches and women in, in business or tech, and they're craving it. Like this is the
Mhm.
real mind fuck of the mismatch. Because yeah, women in the 20th century became a little more masculinized. They entered the workforce, they started being empowered. You have first, second, and now like third and fourth wave feminism. And there's all this stuff happening. There's good and bad in it, of course. But then we saw men in the 1960s, like, growing their hair out, experimenting with psychedelics, becoming softer, entering, the mythopoetic men's work movement. And now we have men, yeah, like unlocking more of their care and compassion and being more inclusive and aware and like attuned, which is great. But you can't go like to the extremes, because then we have this complete mismatch of like masculinized women and feminized men. Like all these women, yeah, they want some more care. They want to be listened to. They want emotional availability, but they also want a man who's a conqueror and assertive,
Mhm.
especially in
Mhm.
polarity and intimacy, also in
Mhm.
like business and things. And I've seen a lot of guys, yeah, because of Me Too and because of the culture wars, like woke movement and milieu that we're in, they're afraid to use their power, because as soon as they do, they get clapped down or they get pulled down, whatever. And that's just part of the game. If you're going to use power, if you use it with right relationship and responsibility, you have nothing to fear. And this
Mm.
is what the world needs. It needs men to step into their power and lead, and women to lead and rise with them, and then enter into that dynamic, which in polarity, it's pretty clear cut, right? When like the masculine and feminine forces come together in a relationship, it's fireworks, chemistry, power, energy.
Mm.
We need to see this in like a community context and in a government context and like whatever. If you want to go macro, that's the world we want to see being built. And it's going to
Mhm.
require the right use of power, the responsible use of power, extreme ownership and responsibility. You're going to make mistakes. That's the main thing with men, right? It's like you can't be afraid to make mistakes. As long as
Mhm.
you're in integrity, which means you do what you say and you're in right alignment and you're willing to like break some eggs to make an omelet. Like a lot of men need to actually go further into that side, not back away from it, right? As
Mm.
they've learned to.
Yeah, and I remember what I was going to share before. This kind of competition muscle. If I look back in my right now, I'm back in Boston area, was spending some time with family, and I think about the many years I spent on the soccer field, just like really fine tuning that competitive muscle, which was directed towards, winning a soccer match, football match. There can be better things to do with the time. And I look back at the lessons that I learned from gaining that competitive muscle, as well as the teamwork that came with that. So I also do feel that we as men can move beyond the competition into more comrades, into more of a sharing of power. And yet there's something still, I think, important with that assertive force to be able to not necessarily win the game, but to be able to know and have the confidence. Like I feel like all of the times I spent on the field and the different, sporting games, like I have such a confidence in my being when I show up into something. And I'm not putting that all to the competition I learned on the sporting match, but in many ways, like that muscle was very finely tuned by that space. So how would a man who hasn't necessarily have that, wants to gain that confidence, but can utilize competition, but without the unhealthy paradigms of it?
Yeah, I love what you said there about sharing power, because the kind of legend in Buddhism, and like I think this is similar with like Christ or these avatars, like Christ and Buddha being these like great men that changed the world. The Buddhists talk about the next Buddha won't be an individual, it'll be a sangha, it'll actually be a community or like council.
Mm.
And that's a profound sharing of power. And this is what we want to see. And there's also some streams of this in more like esoteric Christianity, where it's like Christ isn't going to come back as like a dude, it's going to come back as a consciousness or a field, right?
Mm.
And this is what men you really see. You see this. I work with veterans. I have friends that are veterans. The military touches on this. I know you served
Mhm.
like maritime, right? So it's like there's a group consciousness when men have a shared goal and purpose that binds them together with
Mm.
love for each
Mm.
other and brotherhood.
Mm.
That's so healthy. And by the way, this is studied, scientifically. Women love that. Women love men in uniform and men that are respected by other men and assert themselves with other men, because that's a very strong marker that they're going to be a great mate, a
mm,
protector and provider, right? And what we want to see is like, turn on your competitive edge, your killer instinct, but put it into the service of the community as a whole, not just
mm,
I'm going to go on Wall Street or join a startup and just get as much money as I can, or I'm going to start this project or whatever and just destroy my competitors at all costs. Like, nobody likes that, because
mm,
it sets up a very imbalanced reciprocity. We're actually wired, it's called like the helper's high, to help. Like, literally in our brain neurology, we get oxytocin when we help other people and add value. And
mm,
men have this too, with other men and with the community. So we can totally work with our biology and our design. We're not these like brutal killers who just want to like destroy the earth and like resources. We're actually designed to be pro-social and collaborative.
mm,
That's the funny
mm,
thing. It's like the game A, capitalism and like winner take all modality is actually against nature.
mm,
But it was a necessary stage, just like the caterpillar going into the chrysalis, to metamorphose into something more profound and
mm,
into that more abundance paradigm, or game B. And men are at the forefront of this. Men are the builders, and science, engineering, business, politics. They're driving this stuff forward. Now, all those strong men have a strong woman like with them, beside them. That's the thing. Like, women are a huge part of this as well. And I see this a lot with coaching, right? Over the past several years, really since COVID, there's all these women that are just waking up, joining sisterhood, really diving deep and healing and powering up. And they're like, where are the guys at? A lot of
mhm,
these guys are lagging behind a little bit. The good news is that they just need to step into doing hard things, right? This is why guys love, Jocko and David Goggins and Rogan and the UFC and all these guys. It's because things like martial arts, entrepreneurship, doing hard shit like cold plunging, breath work, whatever. This is how you build testosterone and masculinity and assertion.
mm, mm,
And you can do that by being a heart-centered man. You don't
mm,
have to become an asshole like this picture that's been painted of the past, right?
mhm, mhm. Yeah, and I really hear in that there's a level of synergy and attunement being invited for men who are stepping up into power in this way, to recognize their own innate individual power, but then to be present to see how that power impacts those around them, but to still keep a level of assertion moving forward. And yeah, I certainly feel it in a polarity world as well. I mean, my um, current beloved who I'm, deepening with. I feel like, right now we're landing this community project in Portugal, and between her and another friend of mine, it's the three of us, and both of them are very strong, assertive female bodies. And, when I'm kind of taking care of things, you can almost feel like there's a part of their relaxation that comes on that they're not used to. It's like exercising a new muscle because they're so used to being the get shit done, let me take care of
Right.
everything female body.
Totally. I
So
mean, women crave this. Their nervous system relax, and like it opens neurologically, even with their hormonal system,
mm,
their libido, their like care. It thrives when they're in masculine containment and leadership. And that's not a position of less than.
mm,
It's actually a position of power for women. There are women that are uniquely like wired and driven to be very masculine and succeed in that world. Like, those women exist, but the majority of women that I speak to, and maybe I'm biased in my bubbles, as I'm sure you might be, these women are all craving this, right? They want to
mhm,
be able to play this game and collaborate with the masculine, and that's the kind of men they're looking for. When I work with women in dating and courtship, they want to get married and have babies with a man like that. They're not necessarily looking for a man who's going to like worship them and pedestalize them and give away power. Like, that's not what they actually want. Although some of them thought they wanted that and they tried it out, and the results weren't so great.
yeah. Yeah, and in that conversation, I hear a fair amount of women who have the ideology and the mental framework of understanding that they want this strong, potent, powerful, assertive masculine to be there. But often what I see happen is once that man shows up, in that it requires her to actually meet a state of surrender that maybe she's never even met before, that she might be terrified of. And so what I see happen, I'm sure I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is that when that guy shows up and then she realizes she has to surrender, she actually comes back even more passive aggressive towards that masculine that's been showing up, just to create separation, to keep in the norm and keep inside of her story that she's been holding on to, because to actually shape herself into something new would require a level of surrender that I think is beautiful. Like, surrender is so beautiful, but so many female bodies in that way can be afraid of it because they've been in the directive role for so long.
Oh yeah. I mean, this is where the rubber meets the road in polarity is like a very strong, grounded masculine nervous system that's in protector provider matches up with a very surrendered feminine nervous system that's in like love and devotion. And it's again, both are positions of power. It's not power over. That's the old kind of like caricature of polarity, right? The 1950s housewife, like Data's first stage. This is
Hmm.
not what we're talking about. And I see this all the time when you meet, even in my own relationship with my lady, it's like, yeah, like when you step into that, all your beliefs get challenged. We learn from our parents or past partners. You have to like break through that and enter into like a softness in this conversation between the nervous systems. And it cuts both ways, right? I know lots of women that are strong, independent women. They meet a masculine man and suddenly they're like, I don't really care about my business so much anymore. And I just want to like be in love and be like so juicy and feminine. And it's scary to them. It's a defense mechanism to kind of default back to it or create the separation to reinforce that identity. But it's an old identity that's not serving. And it happens the reverse too, although I see this maybe less often, where like a man's like, yeah, I just want this powerful queen and feminine woman. And then they meet her and then they get shocked into, oh shit, like all the ways they're not showing up. And so it is this kind of delicate dance we're seeing. I really, I posted today, I did like a tweet on this, like, men are stepping into power, joining brotherhood, studying history, going back into traditional masculinity, and women are softening, becoming more feminine and bonding with their sisters, and nature is healing. I see it as very much natural law. Like, you're not going to be able to outwork it. We're kind of coming out of this cycle where we had to go to the opposite extremes to re-find our way in this new crazy world that changes every day.
Hmm. Yeah, my beloved now, like, she's in the kind of transition out of a very structured, more kind of corporate world that she was dancing in, and has been, in this world for a while, but has kind of been navigating both places. And things have come up recently, and I could feel her kind of in her. I'm like, babe, like, I got you, like, you're fine, like, you're held. And she's like, oh, like, I could feel in her words and her essence, like, experiencing the layers of her nervous system just like coming in more and more and more. And as a result, like, parts of her own, biological systems are now regulating themselves. Like, she just shared with that really recently. She's like, oh my God, like, I'm becoming more regular. I'm like, yeah, babe, just we're gonna make some babies. And so, yeah, it's beautiful to see when, like, the surrendered states of being meet the naturalness of the body, especially for female bodies. Mm.
Yeah, they're the male and female hormonal status. You can argue that biology is wrong and like we can redefine it, right, in the modern postmodern mindset, which I think is just ludicrous. But biology doesn't lie.
Mm.
Male hormonal status is about provision and like protection and strength and like leadership, and like men thrive in that. Their testosterone literally goes up and they become safer, more powerful men for women. And likewise, women in a female hormonal status, their estrogen goes up. They become much more sensitive and attuned and like full of life, that like Shakti. And they're not as interested in these like mental, very like logical models. They're much more just like love and surrender and devotion to the man. And then like when those two come together, everyone can feel it, right? Like when you're with your beloved and that's like set up, everyone relaxes around you. Like
Mm.
you entrain other people to that state of like male female nervous system. It's so beautiful, and we all know what that feels like, even if we only experienced it for a little while. Most relationships in the honeymoon phase default into this, but if you can't outwork the patterns, you'll drift back into like that comfort zone, right, or the defense mechanism. And that's where like doing the work and like having community, men and women's circles is so powerful.
Yeah, what do you see with, the dating world now? I mean, I feel like what I've been seeing in your posts, you're kind of going more into the expression and supporting around the polarity world, which is beautiful. I'm glad that you're doing that. And in the realms of the dating world, like I do feel like there's a quickening that happens with two people with like the honeymoon phase seems to be a lot shorter and like shit's arising a lot quicker, which I think is great. It's like better to get to the essence. And, in the realms of what we're discussing is like the place of where polarity really thrives. And when two people are just beginning to meet, it's like it's challenging, I know, for women to really go into that deeply surrendered state right away because they're like, can I trust him? Is he real? Is he authentic? Like, is he a fucking schmuck? All these different things that come up, and so it's fair enough, and I know a lot of women that have been hurt that way just from trusting too much and like wanting him to be all of that. And then actually the man can't quite hold it. So, like, I just, with the layers between the reality and meeting initially and where these deeper places of the polarity start to sit in.
Yeah. I mean, I draw a distinction in my work between like dating and courtship. Like, I tend to work with folks in their 30s or 40s, that have some professional success, whether they're entrepreneur or corporate, and they're kind of done with the exploratory phase, which is beautiful. Like when you're in your 20s or whatever, like you're just kind of like tasting. It's like taste testing. It's like, all right, what kind of woman do I like? What kind of men do I like? And you have all these experiences. Maybe you have a really powerful relationship where you really bonded, but then you fully opened your heart expecting the dynamic we're describing, and then you get hurt because the expectations weren't met. And you
Hmm.
kind of armor up for the future relationships because you never want to feel that pain again. But the danger of love and the beauty of love is that, to really open your heart, you open yourself up to getting hurt, but that's
Hmm.
also where the magic happens. So what I'm seeing, when I work with people in dating and like help audit their dating profiles and stuff like that. And the market out there, it's brutal. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, if you're on dating apps or meeting people on Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, or websites or whatever, like it's a strong filtration system, right? Because you have women on one hand, to paint the extreme, it's like he has to be 6 foot, six figures, have a six pack, and have all this together. And like women are very, in evolutionary theory, women really drive the market because they're the chooser in the sexual dynamic, right? They're the gatekeepers of sexuality. They choose who to share their body with and who to let in their heart. Whereas men are the ones that gatekeep the relationship. The man has to go first and claim her, right? I want to be with you. I want to date you, or I want to claim you and make you my partner, wife, mother, whatever. And so men and women are having, like you said, it's a quickening. They're kind of like leapfrogging into this like little arms race, and it's definitely challenging. I often advise clients who are really ready to meet the one or like kind of practice for the one with the person in front of them. It's more about courting. It's kind of the old school mentality where it's like go slow, don't just jump into bed, don't jump into a relationship and go warp speed. Really let each other reveal and find value alignment. Because there's the chemistry alignment, which it's like, oh, he's hot, she's beautiful, and you just like go like a magnet. But what you see long term, what determines success in marriages and like long term relationships is values.
Hmm.
Shared values and vision is actually what will carry you the distance. The chemistry and the lust energy still needs to be there. It's still very important. But I think people are, because of hookup culture and how easy it is to just meet a new person like all the time, people are really digging deeper. I'm really happy to report, in my small sample size, that people are much more looking for that long-term courtship and partnership instead of like the fast food intimacy, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and then we really get into the conversations between polyamory and monogamy and kind of the ups and downs between that. I've always felt quite strongly for myself, like I feel like when I start to get fully met and I can just feel it in my body that I'm fully met, it actually becomes quite easy for me to naturally just go towards one. And yet if there's any of my centers that aren't quite vibing and like in alignment or something kind of feels a little bit off, it's like there's a part of me that's like, no, keep myself open in that way. And I really felt that this last year with the woman I was seeing for a while. It was beautiful, and yet I couldn't. There's a part of me that couldn't fully choose her, and I know that was challenging for her. And I wanted to, because we met on all these different like intellectual levels and all these different places. And yet there was a deep like felt sense inside of no, like that's something about it doesn't feel right. I'm curious if you've had experiences with that, and especially as a man with felt sense, because felt sense is like this and is more, I would say, feminine piece, but it's a bit more wrapped around like the intuition and the feeling beyond just the okay, she's this and this and and sexy and intelligent and all that. It's like, can I actually like feel a deeper layer that feels fully connected here?
100%. I mean, I definitely had my own journey with this where, at one point in my life, I was prioritizing like physical looks and chemistry, right? Of course, like when I was younger. But later on, again, to the value conversation, ultimately a woman most opens when she's claimed or chosen,
Mm,
and this comes up with couples I work with where it's like when a woman doesn't feel fully chosen and the man's not choosing, he's basically holding back his heart subtly, right? That is such a difficult place to be in because the woman, her body and heart only opens when she feels safe and claimed. She's
mm,
contained, right? And again, this doesn't mean you're like dominated or power over. It means I'm choosing you to go all in. And that felt sense has to be there for the man where everything could be right on paper and all your friends are like, oh, you're such a great couple, when are you going to have babies? But the essence isn't fully met. Like you said, if a man doesn't feel met, I think there's a lot of wisdom in like the David Data, John Wineland kind of theory of polarity where men really value respect.
mm,
When a man feels respected by a woman and honored, especially in his purpose, he's much more likely to choose her. And vice versa, women, when they feel truly loved and listened to and seen, like seen beyond the physical, they're much more likely to open and choose the man back. And then they enter into that dynamic. But, unfortunately, because of trauma and past relationships, there's a lot of people that are in relationships or even married, and they've never fully done that. They've never actually fully claimed or chosen, even if they have kids or whatever. And you can still get there. It's just it's really hard to outwork those patterns, and you have to
mm,
like really work at it. And some of us are blessed, to meet someone and it happens very quickly, where like the choosing and like the claiming happens from the jump within the first 6 to 12 months or whatever. Others have to find it later. The hard part is you have to stay in the discomfort long enough to get to that place of meeting.
mm,
Um, and that's the hardest part, right? I see with people, especially with men, because it's the fear of commitment, right? For men, it's the fear of commitment, which is perceived often as loss of freedom, right?
mm,
I'll lose
mhm.
myself in the woman. Because like me in my past, and a lot of men, I pedestalized women and like fell, right? Not rose in love, and then lost myself, right? Lost my connection to my purpose and power because I got swirled up in her world or pedestalized her. And a lot of women can feel that and then they lose respect for you. That's kind of the
Mhm.
dynamic there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a I think when a man can know himself more deeply, and this is one of the reasons men's work is so potent and powerful, is it's like when he can have those lessons and learnings that he embodies, and then be able to meet his partner in a place beyond the pedestaling, beyond the putting in the pit, but actually being met more in a place of wholeness. Then there's actually a place for the woman to lean into. I personally think one of the areas that creates the most turn off, and the honeymoon phase happens and the woman sees a man and masculine, and then eventually some of the man's more tenderness or softness or kind of more ambiguity start to come out. And then there's that shift in polarity, right? Where, suddenly now the masculine and the female body has to have some level of capacity to witness without judgment and to be a space holder and not judge and condemn the needy little bitch that's sometimes in the man's body. And men are like, oh, I can't show that. So then they go back into being masculine, but then the woman's like, I can't feel you. Where'd you go? And like this is this kind of merry-go-round. I guess from your perspective, like this place of a man starting to feel comfortable in his emotions, in his needs, in his like, this is really fucking awkward, but I know I'm supposed to be here, but I want to run away and go hit the gym. Like, what are you speaking to this?
Yeah, I mean, this is the hardest part, is like the woman fully letting go in the sense of surrender, right? Surrender is not like I lose, I'm weak, I'm a pushover. It's like I'm fully open to feel everything. Like women are
Mm,
naturally better at that because they're intuitive, emotional beings, right? They're like pure eros. Men, it sometimes has to be learned. Like when we were boys, it's quite easy. Like our emotions just flow, right? And we just express them. But we learn to shield, block, stifle, whatever. And as a man, like a woman needs to feel you. You know, so many women would like rather have a fight with you and feel your anger than feel your passive aggression or your
mm,
people pleasing. And so a lot of this like no more Mr. Nice Guy stuff when I work with men, it's like, yeah, learn to regulate your emotions and nervous systems in a good way. And that doesn't mean you need to be nice and like kind of coddling all the time. Sometimes you need to be very strong, and you can just own what you're feeling. It's all about radical ownership. Like I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling separate from you, I don't trust you, I'm feeling like I can't fully love you because you're not receiving it.
mm,
This is the real value again of men's work and having brotherhood, because some of that, yeah, your woman needs to feel it as a man. You need to go into it with her. And it's going to be messy. It's going to be fucking uncomfortable. You're not going to seem like you're put together. And that's okay. She's not going to judge you based on always being this like perfect macho man or whatever image you have. She just wants to feel your authenticity. But some things you're going to have to bring to other men, right? Like, and be vulnerable with other men and be like, man, I'm really struggling. And like, I need accountability from y'all. I need your advice. And women the same with their women, because otherwise you enter into like a parent child or, client coach or therapist relationship with your beloved, and that just kills polarity. So there is a real need to, it's all about community, right? We're village tribal creatures, and we still are, even with this crazy interconnected world where people unfortunately are more isolated than ever. And there's this whole pandemic of male loneliness and this whole conversation happening even in the mainstream, where men with other men and women with other women that then have relationships. That's the power, because you are more resourced. Like a
mm.
lot of men are just under resourced when it comes to emotion and showing it or feeling it.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, I guess a personal question for you and your, current relationship and having kind of witnessed you two come together through the years. What was the point where you knew inside yourself that you could fully choose her and show up in that way? Like, I feel like different moments happen in the dating world, and you're
Yeah.
kind of like, "Yeah, is this good?" And like, I don't know if you remember a point where you felt like, like I can fully show up. And was it a point where you felt she could receive all of your love, or was it a point in which like you felt fully like loved by like fully loved by her? Where was the point that happened in that for you?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. I mean, for me, it happened very soon where I was like, whoa, I was blown away. And for me, I'm very much like sapiosexual. So it's like I need the tantric like polarity dimensions, which we had, but then the intellectual, emotional like maturity was there too, very early on in the first like month, I'd say. And I was already like, holy shit, okay, this is different. And I can feel like I'm going all in. And like we didn't, move very slow. Like I'm not really practicing what I preach with that. But again, when
You
like the
know.
rules get broken when there's full alignment, I will say,
Hmm. Hmm.
which happens differently for everyone. It's very unique to individual. But for us, it happened quickly. And I definitely felt it. Like, we met in Bali, then we dated in Costa Rica briefly. And then I immediately invited her to come back to Texas and LA with me. And I was doing all these events, and we just kind of went in. And even when I was like struggling with work, or like I was like in uncertainty with her because we had to travel a lot, we were nomadic, we lived all over the world before we came back to the States. I could be in my messy like frustration and like, or like for me, I'm very actually avoidant, where I'll just kind of go to my cave. And when I still felt her loving me and just accepting me as I am, it just melted my armor. And I'm just
Mm,
like, okay,
mm,
I can just show up. And I can like, in past relationships, I would experience getting judged or like belittled or whatever, like the like negative aspect of the feminine, which goes back to the man's relationship to mother, like would come out. And I would, instead of hiding or like needing to like create distance or disconnect, I could just be in discomfort with her.
mm,
And then
mm,
she started to open more, which made me want to rise up and claim her more. And then she would open more, and it creates this slinky effect that's
mm,
really beautiful. So I'm so grateful for her. And obviously, she's in this work as well. She also coaches and teaches. So we had like a lot of tools. But you don't need to be in that, that world or industry to do it. It's just, it really is authenticity and like loving each other's mess and having a lot of care for like, the inner child and just the raw emotion. It's just emotion. It's the stories that disconnect you.
mm,
Raw
mhm,
emotion is actually pure power and can just attract you more.
mm. Yeah, beautiful. What I really hear in that is that in your vulnerability and in your tenderness, like your experience wasn't love being taken away, and it was actually her leaning in to love you in those
Yeah.
places that you normally would feel a little bit contraction. No, I can so much can relate to that. Like even, with my partner now, when things come up, I notice, I have my own kind of similar places where I'm just like, I'll just handle this on my own. And the moment there's any place of that, she's like, babe, what's up? And it's really nothing about her, it's just other things I'm moving through. And just like the place of sharing that and feeling her like expand into being able to witness and hold me in that way and just like to be there to share in, I feel this like my system goes, like I can relax more deeply into this, and I don't need to be the one that's holding 150% of the time all the time, and I actually can allow myself a little bit of deep breaths and relaxation into it. It's a really, and it's like it's a very soothing deepening in the nervous system for sure.
It's so healing. Like you said, it's a relaxed, regulated nervous system, which happens when the emotions just get expressed as they come up.
Mm,
And like they're identifying or labeling them, being able to ask for what you need and then get that need met, which is the most healing thing for masculine feminine polarity, is getting the love that you needed as a child or as a younger man or woman from the other sex. Like that's the most healing thing. And when you find that in a relationship and you're in intimacy and you can be in that and then feel it being met, the need, yeah, you just melt. There's no more need to constrict or contract, because by opening up your heart, you get more of what you need. It's actually the
mm,
opposite of what the mind tells you when it's trying to protect you,
mm, yeah. So if you had Trump's little boy here with you, would you have any words to share with him?
right? I mean, Barron Trump is a fascinating one. Like Trump's kids seem to be really interesting. I mean, like what everyone says, like if you watch his podcast interviews and his family podcast interviews, like all of them, Eric and Barron and all of them, like they say he's actually a great father, and he's not like I don't know if this is true obviously, but like he's not coddling them and they're kind of the heirs to the Trump empire. They're actually having to like do the work and show up to like earn their place and things. So I don't know, I can't speak to the power of validity or whatever of Trump as a father masculine figure, but I suspect, like regardless of how people gain power, they obviously have something unique about them and some kind of drive to actually get there. It's not like they were just
Mm,
handed this stuff.
mhm,
Um, some people inherit power and they don't deserve it. They don't have the makeup to build it up. But um, yeah, I would love to see, Trump's boys or sons doing men's work. Can you imagine
mm.
that if that was like made public? How healing that would be for both right and left.
No, for sure. I mean, his ex-wife was I had her, she was one of the speakers in
Oh
the
wow.
feminine symposium I ran a few years back. So I'm connected with her, and she does a lot in this field actually. Teaching and supporting and kind of in her own way and helping people more with the meditative realms, and it's beautiful. I really do feel it's like someone of that wealth, like there's certainly some driving part of his soul that's beyond just wanting to gain, power and fame. And I can feel there's some part of his soul that's wanting to give back and willing to take a pretty good, projection beating along the way. Not that he doesn't deserve some of it for sure. And,
Sure.
it's like I heard someone saying it was like listening to Trump is kind of like grinding your fingers down a chalkboard. But it's like in this situation, I'd much rather have that than some other fucking puppet inside the office. Like I'd rather have a bulldog you don't know what's gonna do, than just a puppet that's just being strung around by, strings being pushed left to right. So
Totally. I mean, I'm less excited about Trump. Like, I think he's a wild card, obviously.
yeah.
But I'm more excited to get about guys like Bobby Kennedy, RFK Jr., Vivek, Elon, Tulsi Gabbard, like the people he's surrounding himself with, talking about overhauling public health, bringing like, economic strength and like stopping needless wars and all these things. Like, we'll see if they actually follow through with any of this, of course. But that's much more exciting to me is he's surrounded himself with very independent thinking, progressive people that are going to move, health, social, economic things forward, hopefully in this country. And then the world is obviously watching and taking notes. And that's what we want to see, and powerful women, women like Tulsi Gabbard. And I think he just named his Secretary of State or something as some woman.
Mm,
The big thing is like, oh, he doesn't like women. He's this fat chauvinist, but he's actually shown he's partnering with all these powerful women. And
mm,
that's what we want to see in government is men and women in union and community leading together. That's
mhm,
actually the real, shtick that we want to see. Which obviously Kamala, it's like, all right, first female president, blah blah blah. I think that was a great, take, but obviously the people wanted something different. And I'm not
mhm,
sure that she was actually going to be like this empowered feminine leader, like you said. It seemed to be more like institutional legacy, like puppeteering, from what
mhm.
I can see, and I'm just watching what's out there. Who knows what
Mm,
goes on behind closed doors?
yeah, this is what we're just perceiving. And I mean, I will say I'm grateful since his election, crypto market has certainly gone up. That's a
Oh yeah,
beautiful thing to.
love to see it.
Yeah, yeah.
The Trump pump.
The Trump pump in the crypto world. It's a good thing. Yeah. So what's new and exciting for you on the horizon? What kind of projects and things you working on these days?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very deep in blockchain and crypto. I'm very bullish on it. I think it's one of the most powerful asset classes, and it's going to continue to grow. And obviously, we might be entering a real bull market. In terms of men's work, I'm leading the Men's Academy, which is like an online membership. We have men from all over the world. We do symposiums, men's work. We do masterminds, and that's been really amazing. So I invite any men out there to check that out. I'm actually getting back into events. I have an event coming up Monday that's like biohacking and brotherhood. We're going to do, cold plunge, sauna, breath work, and then do some, men's work together and talk about like dating and approach. I'm really excited to be supporting men in tech, founders, entrepreneurs, coaches here in Austin,
Mm,
in person at these events and clients because there's so many men here that like move to Austin or whatever from wherever. And there's this big like boom happening here in business and community, but they don't have other men and they want to team up with men and they're looking to, find their wife, find their woman. And, there's so many, like in terms of like the dating market, Austin might be one of the best places in the world if you're into the conversation we've been having. And I'm really excited to work with both men and women in that capacity and be their Gandalf in their corner, just helping them, really step into the power and embody the things we're talking about to meet the
mm.
one. Like, you know, date, court with skill and practice, and then enter into community with brotherhood, sisterhood. Like that's what I'm here for in my work.
So if a woman is seeking a strong, powerful man, she should move to Austin.
I mean, there's a lot of women have, and that's definitely what they're looking for.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I hear you share this place of meeting the one, and I love this term, and I'd love just to hear more about what that means for you, because I feel like that is something that in the modern dating world can get a little bit not lost, but sometimes wrapped up in the spiritual framing around, twin flames and looking for the one, and people are always on this quest for the one, sometimes for their whole life, and what that means for you, especially in the realms of dating.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the one is like it's your complement or partner. This is like an ancient idea in like Greece and like the Mediterranean that like you have a complement in this life. Call it a soulmate, twin flame. There's all these like theories, but there's one man or woman out there that like if you want to have babies, start a family, do life together, like there's a complement. There's a complementary, beautiful alignment, and it exists for everyone. You know, love works in mysterious ways, whether you believe in a creator, like if God is moving the strings, or fate. It happens in mysterious ways. Synchronicity is the hallmark of falling in love. So that's how I really view the one. An amazing dating coach here, Annie Lala, you might know her. I always like her phrase. I didn't come up with this, but like, you're either meeting the one in front of you, or you're practicing for the one, but how you show up is the same. And that's really the philosophy I teach and like see working really well, whether you're dating, you're looking, you have options, or you're courting someone and it's getting deeper. Like, how would you show up if they were the one, if they were the mother, father of your children, and you're like teaming up to do life together? That's the really powerful idea of the one in this idea, because that's how we're built as humans, as men and women. We're built to be in partnership, biologically, socially, psychologically. It's where we thrive. Your health, wealth, happiness, well-being, your work, all of it gets enhanced when you're in that dynamic. And most people, I'd say 90-95% want that, or say they want that. Certainly there are people who are opting out of that for whatever reason, but the vast majority of us, men and women, this is what we want and what we're building for, and it's achievable.
Yeah, beautiful. And do you feel like in a lifetime, for, philosophically, more or less, do you feel like people can have more than one? You think that's
Yeah, I mean, there's seasons, right? So some
Mm,
of us will have multiple ones in seasons of life. People get
mhm,
married, start a family, get divorced, and then meet another one. So I don't think there's just one singular. For a lot of people, there is, though. I do think some people, because of the way life is quickened and how crazy things accelerate now, you might go through different seasons of your life. Like your 20s and 30s are spent with one, and then your 40s onward are spent with another one. And both are valid and powerful and loving. So, you don't have to lose hope if like you're divorced, or like you're going through a tough breakup right now. Like, you're going to enter a new season of life and meet your complement for that season. Like it's very dynamic.
mhm, mhm. Beautiful. Well, I always enjoy the riffs and the flow and the dive with you, brother. Yeah,
Same.
you hold a lot of wisdom and knowledge, and a deep humbleness and humility, and also a drive to keep showing up. I appreciate that about you. Even if we haven't talked for a while, I know that you're on your mission, you're loving your woman, and you're being a good man in the world. And that I have a lot of capacity to deeply lean into in who you are. So thank you for that.
Yeah, brother. I'm so grateful for you inviting me for this. And yeah, same to you, man. I love the work you're doing in the world. And it gladdens my heart to see men like you just like holding a stand for all the stuff we're talking about and making it real in the world.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, I look forward to next time in Austin. Well, have a good dinner and a good catch up, and see you in person.
Yeah,
And
brother. Look forward to it.
for those that want to find you, what's the best place?
Yeah, I'm everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Just search my name. I'm at Kevin J. Orosz on Instagram. You can see all my work there. And, I do a little comedy, do a little memeing, and also, obviously share a lot about this work we're speaking of: polarity, dating, courtship, mating dynamics, and psychology. And obviously for the men out there, if you want to team up, check out the Men's Academy. It's in all my links and bios on my pages.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you, brother. Look forward to the
Awesome.
next time, and thank you everyone for listening. This has been another fun episode here at Love, Sex, and Leadership. See you next time.